Hello everyone and welcome to another video. I am beyond excited today because we have a very special guest that you requested that I have here on Tech on Carolina, especially the Spanish speaking community. He is a Bitcoin pioneer. He is the host of the Keiser Report. Max Keiser, welcome to the channel. How are you?
I'm great, Catalina. Thanks so much for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. I'm sure the whole community, the Spanish community, is excited for this video. I actually have a couple of questions from the audience from you today. So, Max, to get started, I would like to ask you, or for you to tell us, how did you get started with your show? You have been doing so for so many years. You have been translating into Spanish for so many years. How did you get started with providing value and wanting to educate the community, and how and why are you doing it?
The Keiser Report. Well, the Keiser Report, we've been doing it now on RT for 11 years, and when we started out, we talked to many different networks around the world, and only one network was going to allow us to have editorial freedom the way we needed to do what we wanted, and that was RT. So we started on RT, and in 2011 we started talking about Bitcoin. I had already been involved in digital currency since 1996 when I have a patent on a digital currency. It's really the first patent that covers digital scarcity. Of course, digital scarcity is a big part of the Bitcoin story. And we started covering Bitcoin in 2011 on Keiser Report. And I would say it's been the background music for the entire Bitcoin revolution. Keiser Report's been there every step of the way. So it's kind of like the soundtrack to the Bitcoin revolution is the Keiser Report.
Fantastic. Are you going to continue doing it?
Why not? You know, it's especially in the Spanish-speaking world, the Spanish-speaking audience is just exploded in the last 5 years. The views on YouTube that of our Spanish, the dubbed into Spanish version, are off the charts, hundreds of thousands every single episode. We went to Mexico City just, before lockdown. We had a live event in Mexico City at the Bitcoin Embassy. And it was just a madhouse. People are crazy. They love the show. They love Bitcoin. We love them. We have a great time together. We do our live shows down there. And we've been touring Latin America recently. We were in Brazil and Uruguay, Mexico, and Colombia, Argentina, Buenos Aires. It's fantastic, right? So, the Bitcoin in Latin America we're really made for each other because the people in Latin America understand that fiat money is never going to work. And they also understand that hard money like gold does work. And so this is better than gold. And so it's working out great.
Actually, Max, that is my first question. I heard that you got started with Bitcoin because of gold and silver. Can you explain to people what hard money is and why Bitcoin is hard money?
Right. Well, hard money is indestructible, and it's scarce, and it's desirable, and it maintains its value as a store of value. So gold fits the description, and so does Bitcoin. Bitcoin is indestructible, it's scarce, and it maintains its store of value status as a hard money, as money, and except that it has added benefits, that it's digital, it's portable, it's divisible, it's unconfiscatable. One of the greatest things about Bitcoin is that it's unconfiscatable. This is different than gold because gold is, unfortunately, it's easy to confiscate gold.
All right, so a question that everyone requested from you: what is your forecast for the price of Bitcoin in 2020, let's say end of 2020? And what do you think about 2021? What can we expect?
Well, when Bitcoin was $1 back in 2011, I said it would get to $100,000. So I still think it's going to get to $100,000. And like gold, you have to understand that Bitcoin's price is really tied to the value of other fiat money. So when you say gold, for example, is making new all-time highs against the Argentine peso, the price of gold doesn't really move. It's the Argentine peso that's collapsing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when gold is making a move against all major currencies around the world, it's not because these other currencies, it's not because gold is making a move up against those currencies, is that those currencies are collapsing against gold. You know, 1 ounce of gold equals 1 ounce of gold. And if the fiat money collapses, then it takes more of that fiat money to buy 1 ounce of gold. In the case of the US dollar, I expect that the gold will make a new high against the US dollar in the next 6 months. And then it'll make a move, you know, much higher because the US dollar has room to become a lot weaker. And so gold and Bitcoin price would start to move up relative to fiat money, relative to the US dollar. I think the other interesting thing to consider is how is Bitcoin price going to move against gold? Which one of those is going to move faster? Well, I'm thinking about the comments recently made by Paul Tudor Jones, who's a very famous hedge fund manager. I used to follow him when I was on Wall Street back in the 1980s. And he said he believes inflation's coming back and he loves gold, he loves Bitcoin, but he thinks Bitcoin is the fastest horse in the race. So what does that mean? Well, if Bitcoin's market capitalization starts to approach gold's market capitalization, that means it's going to go from 160 billion closer to 10 trillion. So for every dollar that gold price moves up, you're going to see a Bitcoin move up $25 to $30. That's what that means, the fastest horse in the race. So to answer the question, you know, it depends on how much longer the US government can keep the US dollar on life support system. You know, the US dollar is basically dead and it's being kept alive with accounting tricks down there in Washington, D.C. And as long as those tricks that are being performed, and as long as the Federal Reserve itself is buying assets to the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars worth of assets, then both gold and Bitcoin are being held in check. But this is a game that can never be played. Just ask any Latin American country. You cannot, you know, inflate your way out of debt problems. You have debt, you have currency collapses. And the US will follow in the footsteps of Argentina and Brazil and Colombia and all these other countries that have had currency collapses. And if, not to pick on Latin America, there have been many countries that have had currency collapses. Russia, for example, has had several currency collapses.
Yeah.
And so you'd rather be, you know, you want to be, it's better to be 1 year too early than 1 day too late. Because people say, well, when is Bitcoin price going to go to 20,000 or 50,000 or 100,000? You know, implied in that question is, well, when should I buy it? And the answer is, don't try to time it. Don't be the guy who didn't buy Bitcoin the day it went to 50,000 in 1 day. And then you're like, oh, wow, I should have bought it. Don't be that guy. Own it now. Own it now and just keep buying it. Keep stacking every day. You know, I'm working with swanbitcoin.com right now. It's a great service where you can, you know, do your dollar cost averaging of Bitcoin every day. Buy $1 every day. Buy $5 every day. Just buy it every day. Don't even think about it. And then when the crisis hits, you're like, oh, thank God I was buying Bitcoin every day because now I'm the only solvent person in my neighborhood. Everyone else is bankrupt.
Yeah, that is a great message. And it's actually one of the messages that I heard from you that I wanted to highlight in this interview, that is that the price of Bitcoin is the least important factor of Bitcoin. And you highlighted all the features that why people should care about Bitcoin. And yeah, if you want to add something on top of that. focus
Well,
on
exactly.
education and the
No,
fundamentals.
the point about Bitcoin's price being the least interesting part about Bitcoin, I agree with that. That's true. You know, the more interesting aspects of Bitcoin would be the hash rate. You know, it's over 100 quintillion calculations per second, and that's growing dramatically. It's also got 85% of the entire crypto market hash rate. That's going to go to 99%. I don't see any altcoins surviving really in any meaningful way. They're already completely faltering in every way. It's got 90% of the volume of the entire market. That number will get to 99% soon as well. And, you know, think about the technology of Bitcoin is insatiable when it comes to energy and when it comes to seeking greater hash rate, greater calculative abilities, which require more hardware, requires more energy. And it's really out of our hands. I don't think anything can stop it. Nobody can stop Bitcoin from gobbling up more energy, more CPU, more cycles per second. It's like a Godzilla monster that erupted out of the ground in 2009, and it's just knocking over buildings and taking over countries, and it's just changing everything, and nothing can stop it.
Question from the audience, Max. Maybe you can explain in more details why you think that altcoins will not succeed in the future, and why are altcoins different from Bitcoin? This is a question not from me, but from the audience.
Right. The problem with altcoins is that they're not secure. In order to be secure, they have to attract sufficient hash power to outrun the 51% attack in the case of a proof of work coin. In the two major forks like Bitcoin Satoshi Vision and Bitcoin Cash, they're both incredibly insecure. They can be attacked easily, not with hardly any money. They're not secure. And then, so no proof of work coin is going to have the ability to compete with Bitcoin because they're not going to, all the hash power that's available is going to be dedicated to Bitcoin because it's going to be the most secure and the fastest moving coin. In the other types of coins like proof of stake and these other types of coins, you know, they're not competitive. They're not competing with Bitcoin. They're different, completely different types of projects. They're more like interesting software projects. That's not even part of the same conversation.
Another question from the audience. I think you have already answered it indirectly, but let's do it directly for the people who want to know. How can you be so sure that Bitcoin will succeed in the future?
I'm sure Bitcoin will succeed because, you know, back in 1996, as I mentioned before, I created a coin when I started a company in Los Angeles called the Hollywood Stock Exchange. And I have a patent, a US patent, on a technology which is essentially tied to digital scarcity. And when I saw Bitcoin in 2011, I understood immediately that this solved a lot of problems that we were trying to solve back in 1996 in creating a digital, you know, value that it was impossible to counterfeit. And it does so in a distributed way, right? So this means a huge leap in the technology. And I recognize immediately that this had the ability to solve a key human problem that's been around since the beginning of humans. Humans, since the beginning of our existence, love to trade. We love to travel. We love to gather together, communicate, festivals, trading festivals. Humans are very social. We're social animals. And so money has always been the means to make society and the humans' interaction with each other across different countries and across time possible, right? So that's why gold became the perfect money, because you could have a social interaction with another human being that could span decades. It could span centuries. It could span millennia. If I were to buy something today from somebody and pay in gold, that person who accepts that gold can keep it in their family for hundreds of years, even 1,000 years, and it's still worth, and you can still use it as a medium of exchange. And so that means that my social interaction with that person was preserved in that unit of gold for 1,000 years. So gold, it makes human interaction across the globe with different cultures, different languages, different time, different eras. It makes that all possible. So with Bitcoin, what it's able to do is it takes the idea of gold and it mixes it with the incredible technological reality of network economics and network technology. So we know that starting in the mid 1990s with the introduction of the internet, that when you take humans' need to interact and you mix it with technology that where the cost is constantly falling exponentially, and the cost of technology is the cost of storing electrons, moving electrons, and processing electrons, all three of those major components of technology, the cost because of the technological advances that happen quite frequently over every 18 months, et cetera, every 2 years, it goes down that asymptotic curve towards zero. So now you're mixing gold, the idea of gold, a finite, scarce, desirable, indestructible, unconfiscatable, divisible, fungible, portable, hard money, and you're mixing that with a network of technology, and you're introducing that to the internet. So now you have the ability for every human being on Earth to have an interaction with every other human being on Earth in a way that promotes social well-being, right? And that's in our DNA. We must be socially well to function as a human being per the biological code in our DNA. You know, we cannot live outside of the code of our DNA. We cannot do that. I cannot live like a fish. I cannot live like you know, a monkey. I cannot live like a plant. I cannot live. I can only live as a human being. That is the code of my DNA, and it makes by a prerequisite. It's a mandate. It's without equivocation that we will socialize with other human beings, and we do that with money. And the best money up until 2009 was gold, and now it's Bitcoin, and now the possibility for human interaction is exponentially greater, which means that the potential for a more peaceful existence is that much greater. Because all war, all strife, all conflict is based on misunderstanding and miscommunication. And Bitcoin eliminates virtually all miscommunication by making every single scintilla of thought monetized with a Satoshi, which is 1/100,000th, 100 millionth of a Bitcoin, right? So literally my thought of like, I think I'd like to go talk to that person over across the park right now is monetized in my conscious mind and reflected in the value of a Satoshi or 2 Satoshis, and in a way that's understood by that person that I might be talking to across the park. Our consciousness become blended, and we're all thinking in Satoshis. And once all misunderstanding is gotten rid of, then we have a renaissance of peace. Peace will break out in a huge way. And I see it happening right now. And I see the people who hate Bitcoin are the people who are warmongers and haters. All the mainstream economists like Paul Krugman, who says, fiat money is backed by violence. Okay, he's not interested in peace. He's interested in violence. And he's a mainstream economist. Nouriel Roubini, others, the idea of peace to them is abhorrent because it would take away their livelihoods. So Bitcoin's going to move those guys aside because they are troglodytes. You know, they're very simple life forms that only exist through violence. They will be disintermediated out of existence quite quickly. And other economists and other thinkers will rise. And we'll have this kind of new dawn, if you will. this beautiful experience. It's rapidly approaching. I can feel it. Others can feel it. You can feel it. I can feel it now.
That is a very interesting way of describing it. Max, do you think, another question from the audience is, do you think Bitcoin will eventually replace the US dollar or other fiat currencies in a digital format, maybe?
Well, no fiat currency has ever survived. They've all gone to either 90% or 100% of their value has disappeared. Even the US dollar is only really, if you go back to 1913 with the creation of the Federal Reserve, let's say, it's very young currency. No fiat money has ever existed in the last 300 years. They've all gone to zero, except for maybe the British pound or the English pound, but that's lost over 90% of its value. So it's close to zero. It's still going down. It's pretty much completely worthless as well. So obviously that's not a concern, because what's the relationship with fiat money, because no fiat money will exist. Now, will the United States or some country come out with their own version of a digital currency to try to compete with Bitcoin? That's another question. And the answer to that question is that the much more likely scenario is that the US government and other governments will enter into a hash war, where they're desperately trying to control as much of the hash power as possible as a flight to safety, as for their own survival. If America doesn't start hashing Bitcoin or mining Bitcoin soon, it risks obliteration. Other countries are going to get into mining, and they'll be the richest countries. They'll have the hardest currency known ever to humans, backing their economies. And the U.S., but going back to the 1960s, America had the Sputnik moment. Russia put up the Sputnik satellite, and then America was like, we got to enter the space race. Well, now other countries are getting into Bitcoin, and if America doesn't wake up and start mining Bitcoin quickly, pretty soon, they're going to be, toast. It's going to be, left behind.
Max, you have been in the space for many, many years, and you have seen the market evolved in so many ways. Where do you think we need to evolve the most next? What are your thoughts about the maturity, so to speak, of the market?
Well, like I say, Bitcoin, when I talk about Bitcoin, is the thing people have to understand is that you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you, right? You have to understand that. What that means is that Bitcoin is going to 100,000 or 400,000 per coin, with or without us. Bitcoin doesn't need human beings, right? Because it can get energy all by itself. By, solar energy is available, solar panels are energy, and Bitcoin is going to evolve and keep going with or without humans. So, humans, either they can wake up and understand that this is a period of great enlightenment, to have a universal consciousness expansion to the point where we put down all of the toys and the sticks and the stones, and we finally embrace who we are as spiritual beings, or we will disappear. But Bitcoin will keep going. When it gets to 400,000 a coin, there may not be a human left on Earth to see it, but it'll still go. It'll still keep going. So, that's the thing you have to accept. Bitcoin is either you accept it and allow it to permeate your consciousness and expand with a global consciousness with it, or then you're going to be left behind.
Yeah. Max, last question. For the people who are maybe getting started or still don't know, not only from an educational point of view what to study, because I try to guide them, we have already analyzed the Bitcoin white paper and the fundamentals of why the open blockchain of Bitcoin is unique. What other factors do you recommend to people to follow and pay attention to during this year and the following year, in order to have maximum perspective about not only within the Bitcoin ecosystem and the crypto space, but on a macro level, more let's say, political and economical level as well? What do you suggest that people? Yeah.
Right. So, how do you get people into Bitcoin, and what's a good education tool, and how do you introduce them to Bitcoin? And the fact is that people don't want to don't want to learn about Bitcoin. They don't want to think about Bitcoin because it's too much of an upset to their current way of thinking. So the only real driver of Bitcoin will be panic and desperation. So it's, remember in Cyprus when there was a bail-in of the banks and people's assets were stolen from their bank accounts, there's a huge uptick in Bitcoin, right? So necessity is the mother of invention, right? People will panic buying into Bitcoin. And so my message is, don't wait to panic, buy it today. Buy Bitcoin today, panic tomorrow. The panic is coming. All the fiat money is collapsing. All these governments are desperate, are bankrupt, beyond bankrupt. The global economy stopped working in 2008, and it's just started. It's a rotting, festering corpse, that is just stinking up the universe. And there's nothing redeemable at this point in the global economy. It's just a dead corpse, lying there. And they're trying to keep it going with formaldehyde fiat money infusions desperately, but it's dead. It's dead. It's gone. It's never coming back. So on the periphery, you have Bitcoin people who are going to be survivors, who'll end up rebuilding the post-apocalyptic global economy. And if you want to survive, start buying Bitcoin now. If you want to gamble, that suddenly the banks are going to be solvent. Suddenly governments are going to be solvent. Suddenly all these things that have been going on for 30, 40, 50 years are going to suddenly reverse and go in the opposite direction really fast. And there's going to be this unbelievable change in direction of which way banks and the global economy is going. Then don't buy Bitcoin. You want to bank on Jamie Dimon over there at JP Morgan is going to figure out how to save the global economy from collapsing next time he's at Davos. If that's your bet, then good luck with that bet. Have fun with that bet. But it's not my bet.
We got the message. Max Keiser, thank you so much for being here. Muchas gracias. People, you can give this video a thumbs up. Para la gente que habla español, denle un like. Y bueno, muchas gracias, Max. We look forward to keep on seeing your amazing work and keep on sharing this journey with you as well. It was a pleasure to meet you. Gracias.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. Gracias.
Ciao, ciao. Thank you.
Ciao, bye.